Hey everyone, welcome to our Knit and Chat Live. It's our last Knit and Chat Live, so I'm really grateful you're here. I'm not going to do any knitting today. I just finished the top of a drop shoulder sweater. Got to cast on and do the back piece, but I'm going to talk because we've got a lot to talk about today about sweater construction method. And oh, let me just make sure. Yeah, I am working back there. That's good. All right. Just have to check my audio, make sure that's working all right, and it is. So we're all good. Okay, so welcome. I'm so glad you're here. And let's just hop in and see who's here with us. I know we're just getting started, so not a ton of people right away. There we go. Okay. Hey, New York Knitter, glad you're here. Just going around, running around a bit, move the virtual chairs in a circle and put out tiny bowls of stitch markers. Good, thank you so much. Yes, I know, wouldn't it be fun to meet in person and just like have a knit and chat together? I think that would be so much fun. And Nurse Kara Knits is working on her drop shoulder sweater too. Good. Yeah, I just finished the back and I've got to crank out the front. I wanted to be like ahead of schedule and do the neckline shaping next week. And I just finished the back. So the front neckline is going to be a little bit, but hopefully I can get the front cast on today. The back is done. Just finished recording the tutorial about doing the short row shoulder shaping and the neckline shaping at the same time. So that'll be hopefully coming out tomorrow, but I'm glad you're working on your sweater, Nurse Kara. And Mary working on making socks from Haunted Hues. Yes. Oh, I was just talking to Cheryl. She's doing great. Well, I think she's doing great. I don't know. But hey, Cheryl, if you're watching or watching the replay, glad that the Haunted Hues is going so well. I know they just had their kickoff party, I think last week, wasn't it? So looking forward to seeing everybody's socks when they're all done with that. And Stacy is also working on a pair of socks. And hey, Dawn. Oh, I like those pink flowers. That's really pretty. And hi, Michelle in Connecticut. Nice to have you here as well. So thank you for everybody for hanging out with me. And we're going to jump right into our knit and chat and talk about, oh, and I think it was your question, Tracy, that we were going to discuss this week. I have to go check, but I think it was yours. Hey, Tracy in the UK. Currently knitting on some cozy bed socks. I'm working on some too. Isn't that funny? I finished one, a no heel sock, because I'm lazy and didn't want to do a heel. So I did a spiral rib. I've got one finished, like in a DK weight, so I've got to do the other one as well. And Oski in Istanbul, hi, so nice to have you here with us today. And you're working on the twisted rib hem of your Hermeline tee. Oh, that sounds really nice. I love a good twisted rib. So we're gonna, oh, I keep wanting to jump back in and then somebody else is saying something else. Vicky's working on a cardigan. So I'm so glad that all of you have time to knit while I talk. I can't do both. I've tried. Maybe if I could just talk and knit, but I've got to like look at my screen and pay attention to everything here too. So I can't knit. And oh, it was you. Good, Tracy. I saved the comment, so it's going to be popping right up here. But this is going to be our last live knit and chat. After this, I'm going to go back to doing like the pre-recorded. And it's going to focus just on this topic, Tracy. We're just going to focus on sweater knitting. A lot of different like things about sweater knitting, but we're going to start it today by talking about the different sweater construction methods. There are basically just 4. I mean, there's some other variations, but it does come down to just 4 of them. And so I've got a slideshow so we can look at those. And then in our upcoming knit and chats, we'll have a knit and chat once a month. We're going to dive into a little further into each of the different sweater construction types and all of the other, I mean, there's lots of things we could talk about when it comes to sweaters. So we will be going back to like pre-recorded versions, but we will still be doing lives, just not live knit and chat. It'll just be the live, like the knitting 411, where we just answer knitting questions. So we wouldn't have like a topic to talk about. It would just be whatever questions were submitted. We can talk about those. Some questions might take more to dive into or whatever, but we'll just be doing that once a month. Maybe in the new year, we might go to twice a month, but it's a lot with regularly scheduled videos to go live as well. Cause I mean, I got to prep, I've got to like prep a slideshow and my notes and questions ahead of time and then do the live and then stuff afterwards, like putting links in the chat or in the video description. So it's quite a lot of work, just as much actually. Maybe the only thing missing is the editing. I don't have to edit a video when I go live. But anyway, let me get right to our topic. So yeah, it was your question, Tracy. She asked if we could go through the different sweater construction techniques and discuss how they are knit, whether they are for more advanced knitters or not, and their advantages or disadvantages. I'm thinking about raglan, circular yoke, drop shoulder, contiguous, set-in sleeves, and any others that you know of. There are actually just 4. Contiguous sort of falls into one of the 4 categories. But we just, yeah, there are like variations, and I'm not even getting into sweaters that are knit like sideways, like starting with your sleeve and, you know, going that way. Like that's totally different. So we're not doing that. But when we basically, it's the sweater construction is how is the body and the tube of the body and the 2 tubes for the sleeves, how are they joined together at the top? The yoke of the sweater, not talking circular yoke, but just like the top of your sweater. How are those 3 pieces joined? And there's different ways to join them. So that's what we're going to talk about, but we're not going to dive into like sideways knit sweaters. We're going to talk about the 4 basic ways. So all I did for this was I went to Ravelry. I looked at sweater patterns. I yanked out, well, not yanked, I pulled out, screenshotted some popular patterns as examples. So there are a lot of patterns, and I was going to put all the links in the video description box, but that's like, there is a character limit on and I think it would fill it to put all of this in there too. So if you see one you like, then just note the name, and then you can go to Ravelry if you use Ravelry and just search for it over there. I do have like the little link underneath, so you could screenshot it if you wanted to save it or anything like that. But all of the, like the name of the sweater, the name of the designer, and the name, like the Ravelry link is going to be below each picture. So you can get to that however you want to get to it. But I'm not putting all of the links for all of these sweaters because it would be a lot of text in the video description box. So let me get over to that screen. Hopefully everybody can see the screen. So making sure. Okay, yeah, just checking my notes here. All right, so first up is top-down circular yoke. So sweaters can be knit in so many different, well, directions. You can knit bottom up, you can knit top down, you can knit from like the wrist to the center or wrist to wrist if you wanted to. We're not covering that one. You could knit flat and sew things up. You can knit in the round and, you know, make it as seamless as possible. So I'm not diving into each of those. I'm just going to give you some top-down patterns, some bottom-up patterns. I think probably all of the top-down patterns are probably all done in the round. Like most, yeah, I would say most of the yoke part is done in the round. Or, well, no, some are knit flat, and then you can do the body in the round. But it is possible, like after the yoke is done, to have it all joined, but then knit the front and back separate if you want side seams. You could do that. I don't think it's like super common, but I mean, it does happen. I've knit one, the Goulayne tank, like she has an option for like knitting in the flat, knitting in the round or whatever. Like I did both the top parts, or I mean, I joined the shoulders, so it's technically like knit flat, but it's in one piece. Anyway, there's like rabbit holes you can go down when it comes to construction methods. But so we're going to look at some top-down patterns in our 4 categories. We're going to look at some bottom-up patterns in our 4 categories, and then a couple of others that kind of are offshoots of these basic 4. So first is a top-down circular yoke. So raise your hand if you've knit one of those. Here's 3 pretty popular ones. I mean, Ranunculus and Love Note are like right at the top of like the hot right now list all the time. So these are generally, you know, you cast on at the neckline, and then you might do some short row shaping for the back neck, and then you have maybe some kind of pretty stitch pattern, lace or cables or color work or something along the yoke, and then you divide the sleeves and the body, and you work each of those 3 tubes in the round down. So a lot of people love this because it is like there's nothing to sew, it's all seamless. It does have its drawbacks though. You have to be careful of yarn choice because there are no seams to add structure. You have to think about how you can add structure, and you can add that by like knitting at a tighter gauge, or using a yarn that has some built-in structure like a chainette yarn, or a yarn that has good elasticity like wool. So using a plant fiber or superwash can be a bit tricky because there's no seams to help that hold its shape. So you want to be a little more cautious when using those kinds of fibers with this kind of construction because there's no seams to like give you a skeleton or a frame for that sweater. But not saying it can't be done, you just have to be a little more careful. Sorry. I've been knitting, and I think with some alpaca, and I think I still have some of it like floating around the air and on my desk over here. It's kind of itching my nose. Anyway, one thing I do like to do with a circular yoke is do the neckline later, because I'm not sure sometimes how wide or open it might end up being when the whole weight of the sweater's on there. So what I will often do is, well, let's take, like, I'm knitting the ranunculus right now and making a ton of modifications. So I'll have to tell you about that. First of all is, like, I'm not doing the neckline first. I looked at the point in the pattern where you have all your stitches and you start doing like the decorative stuff. So I started with that stitch count, and actually I doubled it because my gauge is totally different and I don't want like a big loose sweater. I want like a, I don't know, opaque fabric. I don't want it to be see-through, and I'm using a sport weight yarn, so I'm definitely not knitting on a US 10 needle. I think I'm on a US 5. But what I started with is like not the cast on, but at the stitch count that you need before you start all the decorative stuff. And then I did a provisional cast on right onto a spare circular needle cord. So it's all ready to go. So when I'm done, the rest of the sweater, I can come back, put that provisional, those stitches back on. They're on like a cord already. I just have to put my needle tips on there. And then I can do my neckline then. After the whole sweater is done, I can like wash it, block it, put it on, and see, what do I want to do with the neckline? Do I want to like leave it open? Do I want to do quite a bit of short row shaping to really bring up the back? Do I need to knit some? I can make all those decisions afterwards. That's my preference when it comes to a top-down circular yoke, is just I like to really define how the neckline is going to look. And that can be hard to do when you've got like, you're starting right at the cast on edge and doing your ribbing. And that can also stretch out the ribbing because there's no seams anywhere for structure. That is wherever, whether you're working whichever direction, that bind off or cast on edge is carrying the weight basically of the whole sweater. So it can actually be another good thing is to work and then bind off, like work the rest of the sweater, short rows and all that, bind off, and then pick up stitches and do your neckline, because then you've got that bind off edge that's like becoming your skeleton, and it's not the ribbing at the neckline won't get stretched out because it's above that, like that bind off edge if you're working that way. Or if you're working top down, you can cast on, not provisionally, just do a regular whatever cast on you like, work the sweater, not the neckline, and then come back, pick up stitches and work your neckline. And that can preserve it. Like if you've ever done a sweater and like the neckline gets all stretched out because all the weight of it is sitting on that neckline, then that can be an option. So does anybody have any questions or comments about top-down circular yokes? We do have some comments here, and Leah is working on her, I don't know, I don't have enough room to squish things on here with my presentation. Oh, I can't move anything else. Leah is working on her West Knits make along. I haven't seen any pictures of those yet. I haven't really paid attention, so I don't know how that is going. And Madagascar, welcome. And Tracy, I've only ever knit raglans or yoke neck, would like to try other methods. So yeah, so you've probably tried a circular yoke. Yeah, these are pretty common ones. The seamless top down is like the popular thing at the moment. And Sharon is working on a bottom up modified drop, finish the split hem and starting on the body. Sounds good. And Kelly, I really want to try that. Yeah, a circular yoke is really fun. I really like them. The only thing working top down, I feel like you get all the fun stuff out of the way first, and then you're stuck with like the whole body and sleeves to finish. Part of me kind of prefers them bottom up, because you can do all of that because you've got like the goal of getting to all the fun stuff in the yoke. So I kind of like working them in the other direction, just because I want to keep moving through the body and the sleeves, because then I've got like the stitch pattern I can work on. Where if it's, top down, we do all the fun stuff and then we've got the rest, to finish later on. So circular yoke, anyway, I should have explained like what is happening here. You're casting on at your neckline, doing whatever you want there. And then your increases can be worked in, like, you might have like, you work straight, you do like an increase round where you're increasing a bunch of stitches, you work straight for a bit, increase round where you're working a bunch of stitches again, maybe do that like 3 or 4 times. Generally, most of those should be done by the time you can't even see. I'm pointing at the edge of my shoulder. You want the majority of the increases done here. Then there could be some more from this point down, A lot of time you'll find some like raglan increases, like tucked down around the underarm to give some extra shaping there as well. Another option for getting all of those stitches is to like create wedges of increases. So you're not like doing them on like, knitting 5 rows and then doing a bunch. You're like spacing them out, and you might be working some on like every other round or something like that. Actually, the math works out kind of where it's very similar to a raglan. A raglan, you're increasing 8 stitches every other round. A circular yoke, you're still kind of working the same number of increases. They're just worked in different places instead of at the raglan lines. So you're doing all of those increases to get out to what you need for like the full body width around your shoulders and your body. And then you divide up the sleeves and the body to knit the rest. Okay, so next one is top down raglan, another very popular one. So here are 3 fairly popular top down raglans. Now these are very similar to our yoke sweaters. You're knitting at the top first, so you can cast on and do the neckline, or you can cast on and start the body right away and come back and do the neckline if you want, which again, that's my preference because there are no seams in this. So the difference here between the circular yoke and the raglan is if you look at the underarm line, from the shoulder to the underarm, there's like this diagonal line that runs. So generally you are increasing 8 stitches on an increase round, 2 stitches for the body on the front, 2 stitches for the body on the back, and then 2 stitches for each of the sleeves. Now the issues with fit that run in here are everything's increasing at the same rate, and your body and your arms might not actually increase at the same rate. So another version of this is a compound raglan where you actually increase more for the body and less for the sleeves. Like, kind of slide here so you can see where I'm pointing. So you would like increase this way. So you're not increasing as much for the sleeve, but you're increasing more along the body. And then you start doing like same rate of increase along that point. And then at the bottom, you might increase again more for the body and less for the sleeve, depending on the way your body is constructed. This one's a little harder to fit sometimes. Unless you just want the whole thing to be oversized, then it's a little easier at that point. But depending on like your bust circumference, your arm circumference, and the difference between those two, this can be a little weird to get a good fit on. I do have a class on this. It's focused on these 2 types of sweaters, top down raglan and top down yoke, and adjusting a pattern to fit you. But this also, like the circular yoke, has no seams, so you have to be a little more careful about your yarn choice in this case, because seams give us structure. And unless you're using a yarn that has some built-in structure, like wool or acrylic or like a chainette yarn, which has built-in structure, plant fibers and superwash, they need some added structure. And there is no structure in a sweater like this. So this is another one of those cases where if you're going to knit with a superwash yarn, you have to be very careful because it could grow more than you intended, because that's can be a tendency for some superwash to do that, and you might want to knit it at a tighter gauge to help it hold its shape. But like circular yoke, you finish all those increases, then you separate the body and the sleeves, and you work them all separately. So of course the downside to these top down sweaters is you've got a whole sweater sitting in your lap as you're starting to finish. Can be annoying, if you've got the whole body done and now you've got to do a sleeve, and it's a lot to like sort of keep turning as you're doing your sleeves. So it has its positives and its negatives. So right now it seems to be the trend that they're the most popular. So I guess the positives outweigh those negatives. And we've got more people here. Okay, so the clue for the West Knit Cal, brioche, eyelets, I-cord. Goodness, he's got a lot going on in that one this year, doesn't he? He usually does, come to think of it. And Elvira in Argentina, glad to have you here. And Iman in Panama. We have such a global crowd. Wouldn't it be fun to have a knit night and just meet all together? I think that would be great. And Dakota, not necessarily circular yokes, but if the collars are contrasting color from the body and I've already made it and it's getting stretched out, can I just take it off and redo? Yeah, absolutely. You can definitely take it off and redo it. That would be, especially if it's done in a different color. Yeah, you could cut it off, unravel it, whichever direction it was knit. You might have to choose one or the other. Pick up the stitches, redo it, maybe even bind them off and then you've got a bind off that acts as like the point of the hanger for the sweater. Then you can pick up and redo the neckline, and that pickup line kind of protects your neckline from getting stretched out. Oh, New York Knitter knit Florence Miller's Step by Step was your first raglan. It was a sweater my daughter wanted me to knit to match her cat. And the muted calico, the yarn search was insane. Okay, I've never thought to match my yarn color to a cat, but there you go. If that's what your daughter wants, then yes, that's what your daughter gets. My daughter is the same. When she, I guess, requests something for knitting, I always say yes, because she's just very knit worthy. She always wears what she gets, and she loves them and takes care of them, or she brings them to me so I can wash them for her. Yeah, gotta love knitworthy kids, right? Okay, so top down raglan. We've got the gist of that. Now, top down, we can also do drop shoulder sweaters. So this is the third way. The sleeves and the body are joined together. And you can, looking at them, it looks very different than the raglan and the yoke sweaters, because you can actually see like a seam line where those sleeves are meeting the body. And there's different types of ways this can be done. I don't have any of these patterns, so I can only guess. I can look at the seams along those arms. You can see the seam is not sitting on the shoulder. It is dropped off on the bicep somewhere. So that is a clue that it's a drop shoulder. Now, the next one we're going to talk about is a set and sleeve. And this is the ones people sometimes they see a set in sleeve, but they want it to fit like a drop shoulder, so they knit it too big. But they are very different patterns. With a set in sleeve, you want that seam to be on your shoulder. With a drop shoulder, you don't want it to be on your shoulder. So that's the big difference. But don't buy a set in sleeve pattern if you want it to drop off your shoulder. It's not going to look good. It's not going to look right. They're two very different ways to construct sweaters. Now, with a drop shoulder, a lot of times the sleeves are like just a triangle, pyramid shape, and then folded in half and sewn in there. A set in sleeve, which I'll show you real quick, like you want the seam up here on the shoulder, does not look at all like the previous one where that seam was sitting on the arm. With this, you actually have to shape it so it fits the top of your shoulder, what they call the sleeve cap. You have to shape that. We don't have to do that in a drop shoulder. Drop shoulders, like the sleeve is usually like one straight bind off and then it's sewn in. There's no cap to shape in this case. So this is why if I see somebody like, this is a common thing I see, like I just can't seem to reiterate it enough, is don't knit a set in sleeve too big, because you don't want it to look like this, because the sleeves are two very different things. And these are things we're going to dive into further down the road as we get into we're going to go further into each of the construction methods, look at some schematics and how they look and how you would knit them. But the big thing I see as a teacher and looking at sweater fit is people wanting the fit of a drop shoulder, but then the pattern they selected is a set in sleeve. And you can't turn a set in sleeve into a drop shoulder. They're two different things. The sleeves are constructed in very, very different ways. But when it comes for a drop shoulder, what is usually happening is you are either casting on like for the whole width of the back. So you're measuring like on your bicep somewhere down to the bicep on the other side. And that's the measurement you want to get like the width of the sweater. And then when it's done top down, you're usually casting on that whole thing and knitting the back down to the armhole. And then you come back to that cast on point and you pick up for the right front and the left front separately. And you knit both of them until like the neckline is finished. And then you would join the front pieces together and then continue knitting flat until it's down to the underarm. And then at that point, you can join the body front and back and knit in the round, or you could keep knitting both pieces flat and then put seams in the side if you want to. So this one is better for like the plant fibers and things like that, because that cast on at the shoulders gives us a seam. Now, if you're using a provisional cast on, no, that's making it very seamless, but it's not giving you, there's no seam there because you're like leaving live stitches to come back and use later. So it will still work. It'd be fine if you're using wool or acrylic, but not so great for plant fibers or superwash, where that cast on edge is going to actually give you some extra support there and structure to your sweater. Now, another way to knit it is to start just with like the back neck. So if you look at the Olga sweater, give me 1 second. I got to get a sip of water here. I'm getting a little froggy. So I think with this one, probably she cast on just like the width of the neck. And then she was increasing at each side because you get like that line that falls across the back of the shoulder. So instead of casting on all at once, this one is another way of doing it. It's got a couple different names. It's like English tailored shoulder shaping, European shoulder shaping. It would be nice if Ravelry would add that as a tag so we could look for patterns like that, because I really like that type of shoulder shaping. I think it looks really nice. But the difference here is instead of casting on everything for the back, you cast on just the width of the neck, and you start increasing at each side until it's like the full width you want. Work down to the armhole and then pick up the fronts like we do for the other drop shoulder type. And then the sleeves can either be worked, you can like put the body aside and work them separately and then sew them in, or you can pick up stitches and work them down to the cuff. But there's no sleeve cap or anything like that. It's basically just one straight line, or, well, I mean, if it's already joined in the round, then you're going to pick up in a circle, obviously. But if you're knitting it flat, then it's like a flat area. So you just cast on all the stitches and knit down and do your decreases down if you're working that way. But that is how a top-down drop shoulder is generally constructed. Any questions about that? I am seeing what we have here. Oh, and Ellie is knitting the Salty Days sweater. How's it going, Ellie? I like all of these. Like, the sweaters are just so pretty. Like, they're popular for a reason. Oh, and Caitlin is working on the porcelain sweater. It's the only construction I have tried. Such a fun pattern to work. I know, it's just lovely. I really like it. I would like to knit one, I think, in like a bright white with the blue. I like her colors too, but I just think I would like it, you know, like when I've got some porcelain here and it's like very white with that sort of like porcelain blue, and someday I will add it to the list and get to it. So Ellie, okay, you're doing the Salty Days. First top-down sweater with drop shoulders. Oh, wow. So all the texture. Good for you. I made some when I was younger, which was in pieces, as it was common then. I've made some top-down raglans before the Salty Days, flax and tolsta. Yeah, flax is also on the list. I don't think tolsta is, but yeah, that's true. That's another top-down raglan. And, oh, ease in, okay, so Caitlin's question, it seems like a drop shoulder has a lot of ease generally. Are there any exceptions to that? And Kay has also knit the Salty Days twice, accidentally shrunk the first one and had so much fun. Okay, well, if it's so fun that you've knit two, then that's a good recommendation. So Caitlin's question, a lot of ease. Is there an exception? With a drop shoulder, because we need the seam to fall on our arm, there has to be a lot of ease to get the seam on the arm. Does that make sense? Generally, at the full bust, you need at least an inch, but the average is like between 4 and 8 inches of positive ease, so larger than your bust circumference. Now, if you use your upper torso measurement, then you can start there as well. Like, upper torso is good if you have broad shoulders, or if you actually are the reverse and have like a very small bust. Like, if you take that bust measurement, but your shoulders are broader compared to your bust, then it might be too tight in the shoulders. So upper torso is helpful there. Or if you have like more than 4 inches difference between your upper torso and your full bust, then you want to start with your upper torso. If you're starting with the upper torso, you need at least 4 inches there for movement. You need to be able to move. So 4 inches of positive ease at your upper torso minimum. And then at your full bust, like, the standard is between 4 and 8. You can have a lot more. You can have a little less. You can probably get away. Like, if you have a larger bust, like a bigger difference between your upper torso and your full bust, you could do like an inch at the full bust. But that means because your upper torso is so much smaller, it's still giving you a lot of ease through the shoulders, because you need it to fall. That seam needs to be on your arm somewhere. It should not be up on your shoulder. So if the size you've chosen is making that seam fall on your shoulder, then it's too small. You need more ease, because you need to be able to move. And the whole point of a drop shoulder is to have that seam on the arm. Now, one recommendation I've seen is actually start with your bicep measurement and choose a size based on that, because that's where like the sleeve is going to end up, is like somewhere on your bicep. We've got some later on, like Joji Locatelli's Boxy, where it's super oversized. So the sleeve starts at your elbow. So you don't need like your full bicep measurement. You need like further down on your arm. But you do want some ease with this type of sweater. It can't be something where there's like negative ease or no ease because of the seam line. It has to fall off the shoulder. And I see more questions. So let me see what else is going on here. Okay, not sure, but how can you modify the drop shoulder so the seam isn't so far down the upper arm? You can choose a smaller size so the seam sits closer, but then you want to make sure the armhole depth is deep enough so you can move your arm. If it's not deep enough, then it's going to feel really restricted. That is what a drop shoulder is. If you want the seam to sit on your shoulder, then you need to choose a set-in sleeve sweater, not a drop shoulder. The drop shoulder has to fall off your arm. It doesn't have to fall off far, but it does have to like fall off the shoulder somewhere. Like I don't know, at least an inch. I don't like to give a number because it depends on your body type and how much ease you need. But start with your upper torso. As long as your upper torso is getting 4 inches of positive ease, that's probably as close as you can go, and then see where that's falling on your body. And Elvira is working on the Zora by Isabel Kramer, worked seamlessly from the top down. I really like her patterns. I've knit one of hers in the past, and it's really nice. Rebecca Glow has some patterns she calls a baby drop. There's less body ease, and she adds some shoulder cap shaping. Yeah, so that is sort of like an in-between. Like, it's hard to describe what that would be because it's not a full drop shoulder if she's adding some kind of a shoulder cap. And it's not a full set and sleeve because if it's not sitting like right on the shoulder. So that's a good name for it, a baby drop. So there are some in between. So if you want something that's a little closer, then maybe look at Rebecca Glow's patterns. And Kay says, I prefer to select a drop shoulder size based on my upper something torso. Yes, I'm thinking torso. If I go with my bust, I will generally feel like a linebacker through the shoulders. Yes, I use my upper torso as well. And for upper torso, you need a minimum of 4 inches. That's just so you can move. If the drop shoulder is too tight in your shoulders, then it's just too hard to move. So use your upper torso, 4 inches of ease at that point, and then check your full bust. Make sure you're getting at least an inch of ease there just for movement. If you've got a really big difference between your upper torso and your full bust, you can get away with less ease at the full bust. And thank you. That makes total sense. Good. I'm glad it makes sense. All right. So top down drop shoulder. So one more for top down. We still have a lot more to do. So next top down would be set in sleeve. So this is the one where, Tracy, your question about contiguous. Set in sleeve can be done contiguous, simultaneous. There's English tailored shoulder shaping, European shoulder shaping, the Coco Knits method, which is a version of the English tailored shoulder shaping. Those are all sort of subsets. They all will give you some kind of like a sleeve cap. So this is between a drop shoulder. Now, I mean, we just looked at those 3 drop shoulders. If you look at where the seam is sitting on the shoulder, very different fit. When the seam is there, we have the top of our shoulder, which is where we need to put our sleeve cap. So on a drop shoulder, we don't have that point. We've got like a straight line somewhere on our bicep. But on a set-in sleeve, we have this curved part at the top of our shoulder we have to account for. So like that Rebecca Glow, her baby drop, where it is a drop shoulder, but she does a little bit of a sleeve cap because it's closer to that shoulder. But you can look for set in sleeve, you can look for the word contiguous or the words simultaneous. And what that generally means, all of these are a little different. Some of them you are casting on and doing the back, the front, and the sleeves all at the same time. Or I think that's contiguous. I think I can't keep these straight. Simultaneous is when you like start with the back and then you do the front. And then after you've done like some of both the front and the back, you pick up stitches and then you can start work for the sleeves and you start working everything all together, I think. Coco Knits is the same. English tailored shoulder shaping, you would cast on the back neck and then increase at both sides until you are like to the width of the shoulder. Then you pick up the stitches along the front left and front right, do them separately till the neckline is done, join the front, knit that down to the underarm. You could be doing some increasing to get to like what you need at the body for both front and back. And then you can either knit flat or join in the round and knit the body in the round. And then the sleeves can be either knit flat with the sleeve cap is shaped and then you sew it in, or you can use like short rows. And, well, you would pick up stitches around the armhole and then you do short row shoulder shaping to get the sleeve cap, and then you would continue knitting the sleeve down from there. So there's a lot of different ways to actually do this. And this one I really like because, well, if you're knitting it bottom up, you do it in pieces. You've got to like, especially if you're drafting your own pattern, you've got a lot of math to figure out the sleeve cap. But when you're doing it top down, it's kind of easy compared to bottom up. So I do like top down set and sleeve, but you can see the difference here that it sits on the shoulder. It's not down on the bicep somewhere. That's the big difference. And then we have to figure out how to shape that cap. So there's different ways to do that. The contiguous method where you're doing it all at once with the body, or the simultaneous method where you're doing the front and back and then picking up stitches for the sleeve cap and then working it that way. Or there's different ways to do it, but the big difference is where the seam is sitting. So let's see if we have any questions about that. Oh, and it looks like that was Rebecca Clo's pattern was the solution for you, Up Late Knitting. The exact spot on the shoulder. I'd like my sweaters to fall, not as tight as a set in, not as dropped as a drop shoulder. So a baby drop, yes. I guess we need more of those patterns. Designers are just always full of fun ideas. So I really like all three of these sweaters. I really like the ruffle on the back of Alice. I think that's a pretty one. So I think you can, I think if you look under Ravelry, there is the label for under like the pattern features or design elements somewhere in there. I spend a lot of time like just clicking on the different things I can click on, and there is a contiguous. So you could do top down and then click on contiguous, and that will find some patterns like this that are set in sleeve from the top down. Okay, so those are our top down patterns. Anybody have any questions about those? And then we're going to go to bottom up. Okay, I don't see any questions, so we're going to go right to our bottom up. Okay, so circular yoke, again, here are 3 examples of that where they are generally the body and the 2 sleeves are knit in 3 separate tubes, and then you join everything together. You put a few stitches at the underarm for the body on both sides, and then at this on the sleeves as well on hold, and then the rest of the sweater parts, the body and the 2 sleeves, are joined together. Those stitches that are on hold, you come back later and you can either graft them or you can like sew them together. That's like the only seam you would have in the sweater. And then you're doing the whole yoke in color work. Well, I picked color work examples here, but there could be other stitch patterns there as well, right to the neckline. So I actually like working in this direction because it saves all the fun stuff for the end. So I've got something to look forward to instead of, doing all the fun stuff at the beginning and then miles of body and sleeves to finish, So I like this method. And I like it as well because it's much easier to travel with it if you're just doing a sleeve or even 2 sleeves at the same time, or, well, I guess you could do them flat, yeah, and do them at the same time, or however that works. There's less sweater in your lap, when you're doing the 3 individual tubes, and then it's just the top part where the whole thing is sitting in your lap. But circular, it's done the same as top down, but it's just bottom up. We're changing the direction. Again, very seamless. The only place you would have seams is at the underarm, and even then you could graft them together so there will be no seams anywhere. So again, you'd want to be careful of yarn choice here. Wool is often used because, it's sticky, it wants to hold its shape, so the no seams thing is not a problem in this case. It is more of an issue if you're using superwash or plant fibers, so it's better to knit those at a tighter gauge or use like a chainette yarn construction or acrylic. Some additional acrylic with a plant fiber or something like that can give it a little more elasticity and give it some lightness as well, because plant fibers are also a little heavy. Okay, I've got a couple comments. Let's see. Anita, I love the color work on circular yoke, but they don't work with my broad shoulders. Is there a way to convert the color work to a raglan or drop shoulder? Well, yeah, you could like download a pattern just for the chart, and then you could, if you have a raglan you already like and you know fits you well, you could like chart out where you should do the increases if you're working top down, or the decreases, kind of fit them in there. It might be easier on a drop shoulder because that, like, you can do the full width of the color work across the front and across the back, and then like try to maybe make it meet up on the sleeves. You could do that, but I would what measurements are you using when you're measuring for a circular yoke? Do you use your upper torso as a starting place? Because that would give you a better fit so it fits your shoulders. You can also redistribute the stitches. I do this all the time because I've got a large bust, and if I just divide the stitches in half, front and back, I've got too much fabric in the back and not enough in the front when I'm doing the circular yoke. So I often like split things up so I have less fabric in the back and more in the front. But it doesn't sound like that's your issue is your shoulders. I would consider using, maybe try a pattern, but try using your upper torso measurement to choose the size so it fits your shoulders first. And Nurse Kareness, I just finished a Kate Davies Owls, and I never want to do bottom up circular yoke ever again. The fit was spectacular though. Why don't you want to do it again? Like, is it just, I don't know. To me, it seems like a lot of positives, not a whole sweater in my lap, one piece at a time. But never again. But the good fit, think of that. Anyway, okay, so that's the bottom up circular yoke. Next, we have bottom up raglan. So circular yoke, I should go back to that really quickly, is generally still done in the round. You don't see them really knit flat and then sewn up. But the difference is raglan's very common to see them knit in pieces and then sewn up. I'm not sure with these three. I know the honeycomb Aran, I'm pretty sure that one is, yeah, I know it is. It's knit in pieces and then you sew it together. The other two, I don't recall. I was looking at so many patterns today, I can't, they're all kind of a blur. But with a bottom up raglan, you can have your choice. So when you're searching Ravelry, like add that feature. If you want it to be knit in the round, then make sure you add that as your feature. If you don't mind knit flat, then maybe click on seamed and you will have seams. And that's also a great choice. If you have a plant fiber that you want to use, then choose something that has seams and it will give it the structure that it needs to hold its shape. So, but just like a top down raglan, the body and the sleeves are knit separately. Then you join them together like the circular yoke, and then you start decreasing at those points from the underarm to the neckline. So in the standard shaping is, yeah, it's like the 8 decreases on each round, decrease round every other round to get that sort of diagonal. It's not mandatory though. You will find, what's the term? Oh, I lost my words. Compound raglan, that is the word. Where you are increasing, I guess you're working in reverse, so you're decreasing more quickly along the body and then the same rate for a while, and then when you get to your shoulders you are decreasing more quickly again at the body. So it's not like a diagonal line, it's more of a curved S shape almost, but it fits the contours of the body a lot better than a standard raglan does. Okay, so just going back to our comments here. So the bottom up circular, it seemed like chaos when it came to the sleeve attachment. Oh yeah, I can see that. When you've got the two tubes and the sleeves and the body, and you've got to figure out what to put on hold and what to put into the circle. Yeah, I can see that. That makes sense. Oh, and Jess, answering Anita's question, there's been a few colorwork drop shoulder and raglan lately, porcelain, roses, terracotta, that you could perhaps use as a base pattern and fill in with your own colorwork design. That is a really good idea, Jess. Yeah, there are quite a few drop shoulder, and it used to be, I mean, a lot of older patterns as well. You'll find, well, look at Norwegian patterns too. There are a lot of drop shoulder colorwork style. So you can find colorwork that outside of circular yoke. Very true. Okay, so our next bottom up is a drop shoulder. So we've got 3 examples here. I think Boxy gives you a choice of knitting the body flat or in the round, but this is another one where you can knit flat. So I think Weekender's in the round. I'm not sure about Novelli. I'm guessing it's in the round because of the color work. So you can, if you're going to knit it in the round, you knit in the round to the underarm, and then you have to knit the front and the back separately, and then join the shoulders. So either sewing them together or 3-needle bind off, and then maybe picking up stitches and finishing off the arm, or working the sleeves down, or working the sleeves separately and sewing them in, or working all the pieces separately, front and back and sleeves, and sewing them all together. I don't think any of these are done that way. But there's another example, the boxy, of like using your bicep measurement to pick your size. If you look at how much, that's a ton, like so much ease in that sweater, but it falls on like maybe her elbow. So you don't even need like your full bicep measurement. You start with like a measurement further down your arm, and then you can pick a size that fits your arm around that point, and it's going to give you, it's going to be like massive through the body. But if that's where you want like the sleeve to fit, then that's another way you could pick that. And it's actually really nice and like a super drapey yarn. And I actually think, especially because this one, if you're working it with seams, it would be great for superwash yarns, because superwash has a lot of really lovely drape in it. And then if you pick a sweater like boxy where you've got seam, and you knit it flat, so you've got seams at the shoulder and the sides, then it's giving that yarn some structure. Okay, so that's bottom up drop shoulder, can be done in the round. Well, in the round to the underarm. Then of course you have to knit the top in 2 separate pieces. You can't do that part in the round. Does that make sense? And then bottom up set in sleeve. It's very most common to knit these in pieces. So front, back, both sleeves in different pieces. I don't know if these patterns have done that, but again, the sleeves or the seams are sitting right on the shoulders. So that's the big difference. So the sleeves are either, you could knit all the pieces flat. So your sleeve is going to have like a built-in sleeve cap, and then you have to sort of sew it in to fit into the sweater body after you seam the shoulders. I can't remember if you do the sides first, or maybe you do the sleeve cap first and then probably the side seams and the underarm seam. Or another option is like you knit the body, you sew it together, and then you pick up stitches around the armhole and do a short row sleeve cap, which is actually pretty easy to do, and then knit down from there. But then you've got like the whole weight of the sweater. So it's got its drawbacks as well. But I have not tried to do the math to figure out like a sleeve cap from like a self-drafted sweater. Other sweaters are easier. Someday I'll get to that one. So those are our 4 basic types. So we've got circular yoke, raglans, drop shoulder, set and sleeve. So those are the 4 basic ways the sleeves and the body can be joined together. There are a few other sort of ways within those, but they still sort of fall in the same category. So these 2 sweaters have saddle shoulders. Now, the one Giddy Up, it is still a drop shoulder. If you look, I think if you look closely, I'd have to look at this one close up. Yeah, there is there's a line right there. So it's a drop shoulder, but this time there's a piece of fabric that's extending from the sleeve up the shoulder. So it's still technically a drop shoulder, but it's got like a modified version of that. Now this one, the seam is sitting more on the shoulder. So it's like a set in sleeve with that like sort of like saddle of fabric up here at the top. And these are really nice to look at because like if you want like an all over cable sweater, it's really nice to run a cable up the arm, right up onto the shoulder. It just looks really nice and seamless. So still set in sleeve, drop shoulder, but with the addition of a saddle shoulder. So it's fun because you can do fun stitch patterns. You can do color work on the shoulders or cables or lace or whatever you want to do. And it sort of like extends down onto the sleeve. It's just very, very pretty. But it still like uses the base of a drop shoulder or a set in sleeve to get there. And then another one is a dolman sleeve. So these are both knit. The Corbis I just happened to read real quickly, and it's very different. Like it's almost like a top-down triangle shawl, I think. And then you've got sleeves added, but it does have dolman shaping. So this one's very different. The Charisma, I'm not sure if this one was knit top down or bottom up, but the sleeves are they're integrated. I would still call this kind of like a drop shoulder. There's no seam along the arm. There's no seam on the shoulder. It's not a raglan. It's not a circular yoke. So In my mind, it's similar to a drop shoulder, but it can be, and drop shoulders can actually have dolman sleeves as well. But this is sort of just another thing that can fall within that category. So a dolman sleeve, for those who don't know, is this like fabric right here at the underarm point. This one is very exaggerated, like it's worked, just a couple inches above the waist. And then there's a lot of increasing going on. So the whole sleeve ends up being incorporated. So it's not like knit separately, it's all one piece. And generally this, I suppose you can do it in the round and then split and do the front and the back separate, or you can knit the front and back separately and sew them together, the shoulders and the side seams. But I don't know if it would fall under the category of a drop shoulder, but it certainly doesn't fit the other categories either. And then of course there are sweaters that are knit sideways, which, are a totally different thing. And don't really, but I guess even those, I'd have to look at like how you'd want to look at how the sleeves and the body are joined together and where the seam falls, if there is a seam, and how that works. But those are the 4 basics, and then like a few variations where the sleeves are joined in a slightly different way. Let's see, do we have any other comments or questions? I don't see anything. Does anybody have any comments or questions? We are closing in on the end of our hour. Goodness, a little froggy today. Let me check my notes. I don't think I have anything else there. Nope, that is it. So, okay, if we don't have any more questions, we might wrap up for the day. Hopefully that like gives you a good overview, Tracy, or those others who are interested in how like sweaters are constructed. So those are your 4 basic methods, set and sleeve, drop shoulder, circular yoke, and raglan. So, and all of them require different amounts of ease, which we're going to get into in future episodes. We're going to go back to our pre-recorded episodes, but we're going to start diving into each of the different sweater types, look at more patterns, and then talk about maybe the ease that's involved and the things that you need to know. Measurements that are most important for each side or each type of sweater, because different measurements are going to be more important than others depending on what you're knitting. So our next live will be at the end of the month. Usually it's every two weeks, but I will be in Prince Edward Island teaching at their Fiber Festival on that week. I'm not going to have time to come on live, so we're going to bump it to the week after. So Tuesday, October 28th at 11 a.m. Eastern, we'll have our Knitting 411 where we answer knitting questions. So the weekend before, I will post in the community and you can like put your questions in that thread, and then we'll answer them live in our next session. Oh, and we do have a comment couple. Susan says, hit that thumbs up. Thank you, Susan. That's very helpful. And Up Late Knitting, this has been hugely instructive. Thank you for all the specific tips for measurements, pattern searches, etc. Yeah, if you can really go on Ravelry and really like go down the rabbit hole of trying different search functions on there. And Latitude will have to watch the replay. Just got a chance to log in. Yep, the replay will be available probably in just a few minutes after we're done with the live. But that is all the questions we had for the day. So our next session will be our Knitting 411, October 28th. Oh, another one. Let me just see what that is. Came in late. Do you have it covered on the staggered start for short rows? If so, I will go back to review. No, we didn't talk about anything about short row shaping, but we will be coming back for our Knitting 411. So if you have a specific question, then I can answer it then. And yeah, it's been so fun. Thank you everybody else for hanging out with us, and I'm glad that it's been useful, and I love coming on here and just talking and answering your questions. So we'll be back October 28th for our Knitting 411. That is it for today. Thank you for joining me live, and if you're catching the replay, I'm going to put a playlist here for past episodes so you can catch up on all our other knit and chats, and if you've been around for a while and you might have caught up on all those, I'll let YouTube recommend a video as well. So thanks for hanging out with me today. See you in the next video.